Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. My name is Ellie and this is going to be my August reading wrap up. So I only read 4 books in August, so this is probably going to be quite a quick wrap up, but I'm excited to talk to you about these books. And yeah, let's just get stuck in. So the first book that I read in August was A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. So this is the first book in a fantasy series and I really enjoyed this one. This follows our main character, Lady Isabella Trent, who is a big name in academia. She has become very famous for her discoveries, particularly around dragons. And this is written as a memoir, so when we meet Lady Isabella she's actually older and she is now reflecting back on her life and the work that she's done and the experiences that she's had and reflecting on how she got to where she is now. And what I loved about this is it's set in like the Regency era in England, so it has almost like a Jane Austen-esque feel to it. But it's so fun because it has dragons, and dragons in this world are actually pretty commonplace. They're not like some mysterious mythical beings. They are very real and they affect people. You know, the dragons have been known to cause issues to farmers because they will take off their sheep and things like that. So people are very aware of dragons, but they don't actually know too much about them. There's still a lot to be discovered, or at least there is when Lady Isabella Trent is younger. And she has always had this fascination about dragons and about natural history in general. She has a scientist's mind. She wants to know how things work, but she faces a lot of obstacles on her way to gaining knowledge because she is a woman. This is obviously set in the Regency era, so women don't have the same opportunities as men when it comes to education. So in the beginning of this book she talks a little bit about her childhood and how she had to do quite a lot of things in secret. She had to steal her father's books to learn about natural history and biology, and she also had to pretend like she wasn't doing the things that she was doing. So she would go out, she would collect specimens like insects and things, and she would carry out, you know, basic studies of these animals and dissection and things like that behind closed doors. So she had to keep it very secret, but she's always had this burning passion. And then she talks a little bit about her when she reaches young adulthood and how she is married off to someone. She's expected to take her husband, and how she chooses her husband based on his interests. So they both share this interest in dragons and in natural history, and she kind of chooses him because he has a good library so she'll be able to read some of his books, and they form a real unit. Actually, they form a real friendship, very respectful of each other. And we follow her and her husband as they go on this expedition. So it's Lady Trent's first ever expedition, and she goes kind of as a companion to her husband because she's a woman, so at that time she wasn't really recognised as a proper researcher, but she goes with her husband and we follow all of the events that happen as a result of that, and it's so much fun. I will say this book is quite slow in the way that it's written. Not that exciting things don't happen, because they do. There are some really impactful and fun and exciting moments in this story, but we are basically just following Isabella as she is going on her research journey, as she is travelling and things like that. So it isn't as fast-paced as other fantasy books, so I do feel like it's good to preface that and to set your expectations. But I just found this book incredibly comforting, and I actually really enjoyed the audiobook for this book. The narrator was fantastic, and it literally felt like I got to know Lady Isabella Trent. You know, I could literally hear her talking to me and telling me about her experiences. So I really enjoyed consuming the story in that way. But I loved the story so much by the time that I finished it that I wanted to pick up the physical copy for my collection. Also because this has some illustrations and things in it as well. So it's just a nice book to own. For example, there's a nice illustration of a dragon there. And I just also loved how real this felt as well, because, you know, we were finding out through the main character information about dragons and how they worked and their bone structures and what their scales are like. And it felt very sciencey and very real in that way. And I just loved that as well. It just feels like they are real and they are fascinating creatures to learn about, and I can really understand why the main character is so passionate about them. I also quite liked how it was retrospective, so our main character is reflecting back on her experiences and she's commenting on things that she did in the past, and I quite like that trope as well. I like the fact that she will be, you know, talking about what she was doing or things that she was saying, and then she'll interject by saying, I know this was a bit foolish of me to say this, or, you know, I didn't know any better at this time, or so she's kind of, you know, using her wisdom at an older age to kind of look back on some of the mistakes that she made when she was younger, and again that just makes her feel like more of a real and colourful character, and it also makes you more excited to get to where she is now, because at the beginning of this book she is very young and she's very new to her career, and, you know, it drops hints that she is going to discover more and more interesting things, and it makes you, or it made me, feel more intrigued to continue on with this series and to find out more about her journey. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one and would recommend it. The next book that I read was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So I buddy read this one with my friend Martina, and I try to be positive on this channel, but I will say that we didn't have the best experience with this book, but I'll get into that in a little bit. This book is a young adult romantasy book. I believe it was self-published initially, but then got picked up by a traditional publishing house. And it's been described as a mashup between Red Queen and The Hunger Games, and that is exactly what it is. It's literally smushing the two together. So the story basically follows our main protagonist, who is a girl, and it's set in a world where it's illegal to have no powers, and you guessed it, our main character is in fact powerless. So to save herself from being exiled, she has to pretend like she has a power. So she basically does that thing from Psych, where she pretends to be a psychic by essentially just noticing loads of clues and things around her and somehow making 100% accurate deductions every time.
I am getting the letter L.
Lulu, her dog.
So she basically just pretends to be a psychic. She's kind of Sherlock Holmes-esque in that way, I suppose. And the story basically takes off when she saves the prince who is being attacked, because she is of course incredibly good at fighting, despite the fact that she has been living on the streets for basically her entire life and is very malnourished. But she manages to fight off this person, save the prince, and gets noticed by everyone around her, and so she ends up being put forward to take part in this series of deadly trials. Essentially like the Hunger Games, it's this set of trials that is for entertainment, and they're all very dangerous, and that's where the story kind of takes off. So yeah, this one just really didn't work for me, unfortunately. I'm really sorry if you enjoyed this book, I'm really happy for you, but for me it just felt like nothing new. It felt like the author literally lifted things from lots of other popular young adult books and mashed them all together to make a story that felt very familiar, and for that reason I wasn't surprised by anything. I knew exactly where the story was going to go, so I wasn't particularly intrigued at any point, and it also had quite a lot of grammatical errors in here and some poorly constructed sentences, which just really took me out of the story as well. It just made it not flow very well, and despite the title, I feel like this didn't have that much to say about the experience of feeling powerless, which is something that I actually was quite excited about when I heard the title of this story. I thought it might have quite a lot to say about that. You know, we've got this young woman who is powerless literally because she doesn't have magic, but I thought that maybe there would be some kind of bigger discussions around that topic, but there really wasn't. And I didn't feel the chemistry between the two love interests. The main love interest was like a cookie cutter love interest from any other young adult romantasy that you've read, with the dark hair, with the broodiness, and he was described as being like really brutal and really like evil, but actually we didn't see him doing anything brutal or evil. In fact, we actually only really saw him doing quite good things and protecting our main character, and that is kind of a pet hate of mine really, when we are told that characters are a certain way but we're not shown that. All in all, it just really fell flat for me, and has kind of confirmed to me that young adult romantasy just isn't a genre that is for me anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to really be picking up many more books in this genre from now on, because I've had quite a few bad experiences over the last couple of years. The next book is one that I really enjoyed, and that is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. This is a chunky book. It's over 800 pages and it's just like walls of small text. So I think this is the main reason why I only read 4 books in the month of August. But my goodness, this was such a fun time. So I actually buddy read this one with my friends John over at Disquiet and Dragons and Nikhil from Shelf Esteem, and it was so fun discussing this along with them. I think we are going to be doing a live show discussion at some point on one of our channels, so I'll keep you posted as to when we're going to be doing that. But yeah, this is the 3rd and final book in the Farseer trilogy, and I read the first 2 books quite a while ago and then was putting off picking up the finale because I actually heard quite a few people saying some negative things about this final book. A lot of people found issues with the pacing and with the ending, and because I loved the first 2 books so much, I was just really scared to pick up this final book. And I was also a little bit intimidated because of how thick it is. This one is a lot longer than the other 2 books in this series. So I left it a little while, and then John and Nikhil invited me to join their buddy read, and I'm really glad that they did, because it was the push that I needed to get back into this world. And my goodness, did I love being back in this world with our main character of Fitz. I will say Hobb's writing is quite slow paced, and I say that because I think a lot of people go into epic fantasy expecting high stakes right from the beginning, expecting high action scenes, expecting, you know, lots of thrills and things along the way. And my goodness, there are thrills in this book. A lot of things do happen and it is incredibly impactful, but Hobb writes in a very immersive, very slow way, and it's very character focused. So it's all first point of view narrative, so you're with our main character in his head the whole time, and you're experiencing things slowly with him, and things are kind of delicately unfolded to you as a reader. And I personally think that that's really beautiful and makes for some fantastic character development and character growth. But just do be mindful of that, because I think you might be a little bit disappointed if you're expecting action. But yes, it's quite difficult to talk about this one without giving spoilers for the first 2 books, but I will say that this book takes place in a different location. So the first 2 books take place in Buckkeep and has quite a close setting, so you really get to know that place and it feels quite safe. Whereas this book, the world really opens out and expands a lot more, and we are finding out more about the world through the eyes of Fitz, and there is a lot of travelling, a lot of spending time on the road with our main character as he is trying to figure himself out. So that is very much the focus for me of this final book. So without giving anything away, our main character goes through an awful lot in the first 2 books, a lot of really traumatic things, really emotionally impactful things, and this book is very much about him trying to build himself up from that, trying to find out who he is as a person, because he has very much been a bit of a pawn really his whole life. He has been kind of manipulated and used by everybody around him, and this is kind of the first time really where he is out on his own, having to make his own decisions and trying to decide what is important to him and what he wants to do. So it's very much a focus on this character growth, and I just loved that. What blows my mind about Hobb's writing is how she is able to flesh out an incredible cast of characters despite the fact that it's a first-person narrative, and that's something that I haven't really seen done by anyone else. I feel like it's easy to build a really fantastic and complex character, you know, singular character when you have that kind of a narrative, but somehow Robin Hobb makes us understand lots of other characters in all of their complexities, even though we're seeing it all through the eyes of Fitz, and that is honestly masterful. There are so many interesting character dynamics in here. Fitz has some really complicated relationships with people around him, and that is very much explored in this book. I will say that the overarching kind of fantasy plot in this book is resolved quite quickly at the end, so I can understand why people might have some issues with that, because it does seem to sort of end quite abruptly, and some of it is off page, which is surprising given how long and chunky this book is. But for me, I didn't really mind, because I was more invested in our main character and his journey rather than the overarching plot, and I do think that it has left me intrigued about where we are going to go forwards with this series, because this is the first trilogy in a big universe called the Realm of the Elderlings. So I'm very, very excited to get to the next series that has these characters in, but I'm kind of sad because the next series in this universe is the Live Ship Traders series, and that doesn't have the same characters. It's a completely new cast and a completely different writing style. I think that one's multi-POV, so it's going to be a while before I am back with our main character here and following kind of on from this particular like fantasy plot line as far as I'm aware, so I'm quite sad about that. But yes, I just loved this series. I think it was good that I took a break between the first two books and this one, because the second book, Royal Assassin, in this series is a banger. So much happens in that book. It's incredibly explosive and incredibly exciting, and I think if I went into this third book after that second book, I might have felt a little bit disappointed, because it is very much a gear shift. It is much slower and feels very different to that second book, but I think because I had a break from it, I was just very appreciative to be back in this world, back with this character, and I just find Robin Hobb's writing so comforting and easy to fall into, so I just loved being back in this world. Anyway, I've been going on for a long time about this book now, so I will finish this review there, but yes, do keep an eye out for the live discussion that we're going to have if you want to hear some more sort of like spoilery thoughts on this book. Okay, and the final book that I read in the month of August was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is such a classic children's story, but I haven't actually read it before, which is surprising because I know a lot of people grew up reading this book. But yeah, this was a first for me, and I'm so glad that I read it because it was such a whimsical, fun time. I am familiar with the movie adaptation. I have watched that quite a few times and I do really enjoy it. So I was picturing quite a lot of the scenes from the movie as I was reading this book, which I do think affected my experience and added an extra layer of whimsy, if that makes sense. But it is also quite different from the movie, which I appreciate as well. So yes, this is such a fun story. It's very enchanting. It feels like a classic fairy tale in a way, and it follows our main character Sophie, who is cursed by the Wicked Witch of the Waste, and the curse turns her into an old woman. And Sophie's only chance to break her curse is to find this powerful wizard called Howl, who kind of floats about in his moving castle and travels around the hills. And Howl is known to be quite dangerous. He's rumoured to be someone who kidnaps young girls and eats their hearts. But Sophie figures that she's safe because she's now an old woman. So she basically marches up to his moving castle and demands entry. And I just love that about her. She just kind of cracks on with it. She takes no nonsense. And yeah, we follow her as she travels with Howl in his castle as she's trying to figure out a way to break her curse without telling anyone that she is cursed, because that's part of the curse. And it's just a fun, slightly quirky story. And what I love about this is that Sophie actually really works well as an old woman. She's obviously had this curse put on her that she's trying to break, but she doesn't necessarily think that being old is a bad thing. It actually quite suits her. It means that she can kind of be quite straight to the point, quite blunt, takes no nonsense, quite stubborn in a way, and those are all character traits that she had anyway, but she finds that it's more acceptable to act that way when she's an old woman, and I just love that about her. It's very, very charming, it's quite funny, and Howl as a character as well is very kooky, very quirky. He's quite irritating at times. He can throw these big tantrums, but Sophie kind of just doesn't really take it from him. She kind of puts him in his place, and I love that about her. And the atmosphere in this book is so wonderful as well. It's very magical, and I also like how there are quite a lot of clues dotted throughout the book as to sort of reveals that happen later on. So you do actually have to pay quite a lot of attention as you're reading this book to kind of figure out some of the mystery elements, and I really appreciate that because that's something that you don't often see in some middle grade stories. So yeah, I really like that about this story as well. So yeah, I thought this was very, very charming and was the perfect way to kind of transition me into the autumn months. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this video. Those were all of the books that I read in the month of August, and yeah, I'm now so excited that it's September because that means that it's time for all of the horror and all of the spooky books. I feel like I've already got my autumn wear out, and I'm so excited because I just love this time of year and I love all things spooky, so I'm very, very excited for all the horror books to come. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know in the comment section down below what you read in August, any favourites that you had, because I love just having a chat with you in the comment section there. And I'm wishing you all the best wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and don't forget to like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!